Transphobic mother-in-law keeps dead-naming me, but I fought back. My mother-in-law is a petty, cruel, and vindictive woman who is determined to make my life miserable, all because her son and I eloped instead of getting married traditionally. The reason we eloped was because I wasn't comfortable with all the stereotypical wedding rituals, which are rooted in gender norms that I don't fully conform to. I generally present as female and that is my biological sex, however, I prefer the label non-binary and accordingly, I now go by a nickname. It's a simple shortening of my actual name, like going from Alexandria to Alex, just to make me feel a little more comfortable in my own skin without forcing the people around me to make too big a change. However, my mother-in-law absolutely refuses to call me by the gender-neutral nickname I have requested. Whenever I remind her that I don't go by my full name, she'll tell me that she has no reason to honor any requests I make because I dishonored her by eloping with my husband. I guess I should say that she completely blames me for the two of us eloping, even though she knows that it was my husband's idea in the very first place. At a recent family function, my mother-in-law was telling a story about a family vacation from a little while ago, and she kept referring to me using my full name. Obviously, this confused a few family members who didn't see this as malicious, and by the end of the party, my mother-in-law managed to give our extended family the impression that me being non-binary is just a phase and that everyone should call me by my original, full, dead name. But her trying to get my whole family to dead name me was too much, so I began plotting my revenge. She was not ready for what I did next. Go to part 2. Transphobic mother-in-law keeps dead naming me, but I fought back. Part 2 of 2. After my transphobic mother-in-law continuously dead named me at the family function, she confused everyone there. A lot of relatives that I had privately spoken to about using my gender-neutral nickname instead of my very female first name came up to me, telling me that my mother-in-law was telling everyone that me being non-binary was just a phase and that everyone could go back to calling me by my full name. A lot of people believed her, and I was humiliated to find all the people I loved dead naming me, simply because my transphobic mother-in-law resented me for eloping with her husband. So, I started planning my revenge. I knew my mother-in-law hated me for taking away her chance to see her husband get married traditionally, so I decided I knew what would be the perfect, petty revenge, to have a small, celebratory wedding type event, and not invite her to that, either. So, I started the preparations. I sent invitations out, got caterers, had decorations, and I even wore a white dress, though not a wedding dress. I told everyone that this party was just to celebrate my husband and I in our newfound home and marriage, kind of portraying it as a housewarming party, and my mother-in-law never even questioned that she didn't receive an invitation. However, as soon as the pictures were posted, all of which had very obvious wedding parallels, my mother-in-law started bombarding me with messages. She was furious, stunned, and above anything else, hurt that I would basically throw the wedding she wanted without inviting the most important family member there, to which I told her that, by repeatedly dead naming me, she turned herself into the least important family member to me. Her silence was so rewarding, and I've never been happier to hear someone hang up. Finally, what scientifically makes people want you that no one knows about? I use it every day after doing my skincare routine, and let me tell you, this never misses. Recently my boyfriend bought me a perfume, attraction in a bottle from a brand called Cute Urges that's now jeopardizing our relationship. He bought it thinking that spraying it on me while we have our sexy, silly time would turn him on a little more because the perfume was listed to have a small increase in pheromones. If it turned him on more, he would be able to, you get the point. God did it work. I left the bed with my legs shaking, and I dropped to the floor. However, the scientist in me wanted to conduct my own experiment. What if I wore it everywhere? That's exactly what I did. I did my skincare and put some Vaseline on my sensitive points, just a little advice for you guys, and sprayed it there so it would stick there longer and stronger. Then I was off to classes. Do you know those moments in movies where the whole class turns back and looks back at the main character? Imagine that, except it was all the guys in the class. The funniest part is they were already looking at the door before I walked in. It was almost as if they could smell me from a mile away. That's when I needed a second to figure out why this was working so well. I hid in the bathroom and looked more into the perfume's description on childhööd.com, and my boyfriend was dead wrong. It does not do a small increase in pheromones, it's a huge one. I've been toying with all these guys' actual brain chemistry without even knowing. Walking around campus was one of the most embarrassing and best moments of my life somehow. For the first time in my life, I felt like the main character. I had so many people ask me for my snap, and to be honest, a lot of the guys were pretty good looking, but there was no way in hell I was going to cheat on my boyfriend. That's what I thought until I met him. I won't give his real name, so I'll call him Paxton for all my never have I ever fans. Paxton and I got to talking and he's actually a really nice guy. He owns his own startup company and pulls around 6 figures every month. I told him I had a boyfriend and wasn't interested in the dating realm, but I had no problem being friends. He told me that we weren't going to be friends. I'm supposed to be meeting him at a hotel later this weekend, so we'll see how this goes. It feels so wrong yet so right. You want to kiss my boyfriend in a play? Have fun getting kicked out of drama school. I'm a drama student in university, and my boyfriend is in the same program. He's a really good-looking guy, but he doesn't seem to realize it. He gets a lot of attention from girls, but he's always oblivious to their flirting. I'm usually not bothered by the way other girls act, so I never really say anything because I'm very secure in our relationship. However, there's this one girl in our class, let's call her Anna, who is obsessed with my boyfriend. She goes out of her way to be paired with him in group activities. For example, if the professor assigns groups with numbers, she will intentionally switch to be in the same group as him. And recently, she even gave up a main role in a play just to be in a smaller role where her character has a romance with my boyfriend. I know this because I've overheard her telling her friends how attractive she finds him. I've never confronted her about it because she seems pretty insecure and is constantly talking about how she feels that she's really ugly. I also don't think it's my place to say anything because this behavior doesn't bother my boyfriend. But things took a turn at our play's after party when Victoria got a bit tipsy. She started bragging about how she definitely felt something during their stage kiss and how she's planning to ask him if he felt the same. I rolled my eyes and ignored it, until she actually approached my boyfriend. I was there too. Victoria began saying that she knows he must have felt a spark and that he's a great kisser, and so on. I lost my cool and kind of shouted at her, saying, "You sound incredibly desperate. Going after someone else's boyfriend. It's pathetic to think a stage kiss means you should be together." The thing is, one of our drama coaches was right next to us, and she asked me about it. Embarrassed, I explained the situation and my boyfriend said that it was all true. The coach took this really seriously and said that they have a zero-tolerance policy for harassment of this nature and that she would not be admitted next year. I feel bad now because she's still good at drama, and this will probably just exaggerate her insecurity. But at the same time, she brought this upon herself. Am I the one in the wrong here? Define your jawline and slim your cheeks with one daily trick. The muscles in your jaw are entirely dependent on the way you activate your face, mainly your tongue, nose, and cheeks. It seems obvious that trying to flex these muscles in different ways would result in changes in your jawline, but it's hard to figure out exactly what works. Even chewing too many times when you eat food can increase the size of your jaw and reduce its definition, giving the impression of a wider face. Wealthy citizens and celebrities usually fix this with Botox injections, but there are easier, better ways to achieve a defined, chiseled jawline through something called mewing. Mewing is when you press your tongue flat against the roof of your mouth, but most people do it wrong. To get the desired effects out of mewing, it's most crucial to ensure that the back third of your tongue is also lifted to the roof of your mouth. Here are 3 tricks to help ensure that you're mewing correctly. First, click your tongue twice and then try to glue your tongue to the roof of your mouth. This will help some people because the back of your tongue will overcompensate for its previous, strange shape by lifting higher. Second, try to make a very guttural sound, which brings the back of the tongue close to the roof of the mouth, and then slowly seal the rest of your tongue higher against your mouth. Third, and the simplest technique, is to simply swallow and then maintain the natural position that your tongue settles into. With these steps, you should be able to mew, but it's critical to maintain this tongue position throughout the day as its long-lasting effects will result in a sharper, cleaner jaw which usually enhances facial homogeneity to flatter your appearance even more. Good luck. Ukraine has declared total war on Russia. What now? Last Friday, President Joe Biden began supplying Ukraine with cluster bombs, a special type of weapon which has a record for killing civilians due to its expansive nature and how it usually cannot be contained to simply military offense. These controversial weapons have already been banned in the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, and over 100 other countries. Practically the whole world agrees that this is too dangerous to use. The United Nations has even created a convention on cluster munitions to discourage its use, but neither the United States nor Ukraine are signatories on this paper, which means they have no obligation to acknowledge or respect this attempted ban. Other human rights advocates are also criticizing the United States for this move. Ukraine probably would not have acquired these bombs if not for the United States, as the other nations supporting the war effort would never have supplied it on their own. Human Rights Watch said that deploying such damaging bombs will guarantee long-term suffering for civilians. Some critics argue that this isn't something the United States or Ukraine should have to bother with considering, due to Russia's previous actions. There are essentially 2 main types of war: total war and regular war. Regular war represents war between militaries, but total war means that civilians, food supply lines, the environment, and other non-military and non-governmental groups within a nation can be targeted, even citizens from other countries who are simply residing within the land. Russia declared total war on Ukraine earlier in this war by intentionally striking civilian infrastructure and other non-military targets. As a result, it seems fair that Ukraine brings the same leverage against Russia by no longer making a distinction between the country's military or citizenry, but that cannot change the severe ethical dilemma of this. Is it fair to attack citizens for a government's war? Should Ukraine and the United States try to take the moral and ethical high ground here? What do you think? What everyone gets wrong about boomers. What Gen Z and baby boomers have in common. There's a pretty big age difference between the oldest baby boomer and the youngest Gen Z member, almost 50 years. We've always heard about how different these generations are, from how they spend money to how they work and even how they use emojis. Everyone knows about the OK Boomer trend on TikTok, where Gen Z kids criticize the older folks, and in return, the boomers say the younger generation should stop complaining. But here's the thing, baby boomers and Gen Z actually have something in common that we often forget. Bias plays a role in how we talk about them, and it leads to stereotypes and myths overshadowing the truth. The president of the Pew Research Center pointed out this important fact in a recent post. It's worth thinking about because it can help us better understand large groups of people in the US and even predict the future of our country's politics. The baby boomers are often portrayed as a moderate group who achieved some liberal reforms but were traditionally very conservative when it came to economic matters. On the other hand, Gen Z is usually portrayed as hyper-woke, focused on achieving new social reforms, but both of these portrayals are very skewed. For one, substantial polling data demonstrates that baby boomers were in great support of the Vietnam War, reflecting an adherence to nationalism, old values, and reactionary thinking. Similarly, Gen Z seems to have an outspoken minority of students who consider themselves very woke, but this minority overshadows the fact that there are millions of teenagers and young adults living in Southern households, conservative households, and extremely wealthy households, which are all quiet groups that would skew Gen Z to the center as opposed to being starkly left. In other words, Gen Z is more moderate than we realize, and the baby boomers are even more conservative than we thought. But this is all based on polling data and, of course, statistics. Does this make sense based on what you've seen in your life? What do you think? He tipped me a lottery ticket, and I won. Then he sued. Then my restaurant sued. Then the IRS sued. I was a waitress in Houston, Texas, trying to work my way like anyone else. I was a good waitress. I had my regulars, and I knew how to deal with new people to turn them into regulars. There was this one weird fellow, let's call him Jim, who always tipped in lottery tickets. At first, it was pretty annoying because the girls working rarely ever won anything. So when he gave me a single lottery ticket tip on top of an $80 meal, I was a little annoyed. But when I scratched it off, I discovered that I had won big, and I don't want to get into the details or anything, but I chose to take a portion of my winnings every year instead of all at once, and the result meant that I would have hundreds of thousands of dollars in free money every year, after tax. I was so happy, but then he tried to sue me, claiming that if a ticket won so much money, it obviously wasn't meant for me. His argument was that I should receive 20% of his meal, so around $8, and then he deserved the rest. He lost. Then my restaurant sued, claiming that a tip this large should obviously be split between employees, because sure, we had a few verbal agreements to split the money if anyone won big, but no one ever followed that on the few occasions where we managed to win $2 or $3. So really, I was just following the etiquette that my coworkers had set up themselves. But the real kicker is that I had to get into a lawsuit with the IRS just to figure out how much in taxes I owed. Obviously they tried to overcharge me. But, hey, it's been years and now I'm the one living in a mansion. And everyone else who tried to scam me out of my money is still probably working. Husband and wife secretly buy each other the same gift. Every winter, I work at one of those toy gift shops that are mainly aimed at children. The shop I was working at had 3 distinct sections, one for really young kids, one for teenagers, and one for adults. Don't worry, the adult section was all normal toys, just fancier and more expensive stuff. Anyway, I'm working the Christmas rush when a family of 6 comes in, 2 parents and 4 kids. Immediately, the kids are running all over the place, looking like they're about to break things, but the parents do a good job of keeping watch over them. Then, right when I've taken my eye off the family, the father comes up to me with a fancy Harry Potter set he pulled from the adult section. Easily $200. He tells me to process the transaction quickly and to store it in the shop. He'll be back to pick it up later. I run through the transaction because our manager has instructed us to accept pickups like this. But then, maybe 10 minutes later, his wife comes up to me with the exact same Harry Potter set and practically repeats, word for word, what the husband just told me. I told her to maybe consider consulting her husband on such a purchase because it couldn't be returned, but she was adamant. It was the sweetest thing in the world but I never expected how upset it would make those parents. I processed both their orders, they bought some things for their kids, and then they left. But the thing about our store is that you can't return gifts after Christmas. So the couple comes back a month later, fuming, and asks for me because they can't understand why I'd let them buy 2 expensive gift sets. They demanded that my manager let them return one. He obviously didn't because, rules are rules, and I did tell the wife to consult her husband. But, man, with the way they were shouting you'd think that they were the Grinches themselves. What has truly disappeared off the internet? Around 10 years ago, I was surfing the internet using a browser called StumbleUpon, and I came across this really cool website. It was all about this mysterious adventure that happened in a forest in New England, where some kids discovered a secret portal to an alternate dimension. The whole site was trying to explain the scientific details of this, but I couldn't really understand most of that, so I stayed on the main page and mission statement sections, where the site explained future expeditions to this alternate dimension. Because apparently, a group of people went into the portal and never came back. But get this, they were planning another expedition to follow them, and they were taking volunteers. Obviously, I signed up. In hindsight, this could have just been a scam to get my personal information, but as soon as I finished my application, I kept looking through the rest of the site and found had some really convincing stuff. The site said that this alternate dimension was like another America, but it was untouched and pristine, like nobody had ever been there before. They even had these special chair blueprints that unfolded into walking sticks that made the trip easier. But the craziest part was this message on the website. It said, if you found this website, you must have been looking for us for a long time or the universe wants you to find us. If you can solve the riddle hidden on this page, you can continue your journey. If not, then perhaps your quest must end here. But the thing is, there was no riddle anywhere on the site. I thought that my page had loaded without it or something, so I kept clicking around until I got bored. But the next day when I looked for it, I never found it again. I tried using StumbleUpon again, and I even bookmarked the page, but I haven't had any luck finding it. I don't know if it was just a prank, but someone put a lot of effort into that.